Coming up on our newscast tonight. During a meeting with the U.S. ambassador to Seoul, President Moon highlighted North Korea's recent dismantlement of key facilities as positive signs that reflect the regime's commitment to denuclearize. A hydropower dam in Laos collapses, taking lives and destroying homes. While investigations into what caused the accident are ongoing, President Moon Jae-in urges support measures, including relief efforts. For over a decade, South Korea is plagued by chronically low birth rate. With a downward trend ongoing for 30 straight months, the nation could face a demographic cliff sooner than anticipated. News Center begins now. Hello and welcome to Arirang News Center. I'm Daniel Choi, coming to you live from our studio in Seoul. President Moon Jae-in welcomed what's believed to be signs of North Korea's dismantlement of missile engine and launch test sites. The comments were made during a meeting with the new U.S. ambassador to the nation. Our Chief Changwon correspondent Moon Gon-young starts us off.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in described satellite images of dismantlement at a North Korean missile site as a good omen for South Korea and U.S. joint efforts for denuclearization. His remarks were made to the new U.S. ambassador to South Korea, Harry B. Harris Jr., as President Donald Trump's chief envoy presented his credentials to the South Korean head of state on Wednesday morning, along with 4 other new ambassadors to the nation. After receiving Harris's credentials, President Moon told the U.S. chief of mission that the respective intelligence agencies have identified that the North has also abolished a missile engine test site and missile launch site, and that this is a good development for the denuclearization of North Korea. He stressed that the strong solidarity of the South Korea-U.S. alliance is now more important than ever as dialogue continues between the two Koreas and between North Korea and the United States at a crucial time. If U.S. remains are returned as promised, President Moon added, it would have a positive impact on Pyongyang-Washington dialogue. Ambassador Harris reportedly agreed with the South Korean president and said his country also looks forward to the shutdown of the North missile engine test site and the return of U.S. soldiers' remains. This was the first meeting between the new U.S. chief of mission and the South Korean president since the retired Navy admiral came to fill the post that had been vacant since his predecessor Mark Lippert's term ended in January 2017. Moon Gon-young, Arirang News, The Blue House.
So a few days ago, North Korea monitoring website 38 North released satellite images that appeared to show the regime dismantled its Seohae satellite launching station in Pyeongan-buk-do province. New images from a U.S.-based Earth imaging company named Planet shows the communist state could be dismantling more of its missile-related facilities as agreed in its denuclearization deal with Washington. According to VOA News, it shows a facility used in assembling parts for ICBM arsenal is torn down. It used to be in a car factory in the northwestern city of Pyongsong and was still in one piece until late last month, but it disappeared in the satellite image taken last Friday. But then the same facility was previously taken down only to be rebuilt in a matter of days, so it remains to be seen if this is indeed a complete and irreversible dismantlement. Pyongyang dismantling its key missile test site is a move welcomed by the U.S., of course. But some speculate the regime could be using this gesture as leverage in pressing Washington to take action on a peace treaty. Oh Jung-hee explains further.
Is Pyongyang wanting a reward in exchange for dismantling its key missile test site? U.S.-based North Korea monitoring website 38 North reported on Monday that Pyongyang started to dismantle key facilities at its western Seohae satellite launching station. President Trump welcomed the move, and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said North Korea is keeping the promise made at the Singapore summit last month. But amid the positive assessment, there is speculation that North Korea could be making such a move in order to get something in return, a declaration of a formal end to the Korean War. For the past few days, reports coming out of North Korea have been saying that an official end has to be declared to the Korean War. On Wednesday, the North's state-run newspaper 노동신문 claimed making such declaration is a historic task that can't be delayed any further. And the day before, the state-run Korean Central News Agency stressed peace will begin only when the two Koreas declare an end to the Korean War, and that it's regrettable the matter has not been resolved yet. The North's media have also pressed South Korea to be more involved. Pyongyang wants the war to end as it gives the regime a security guarantee. But Washington wants to be more prudent. It needs to make sure that North Korea abandons its nuclear weapons in the end.
The United States wants to keep all options on the table so that even in the absence of the impact of economic sanctions, it can continue to pressure North Korea for denuclearization. But once you declare the war is over, you can hardly justify your choice for military operation.
As North Korea's recent action of dismantling its missile test site came along with its demands for a declaration of an end to the Korean War, it is possible Pyongyang is linking the two issues within the bigger framework of exchanging denuclearization for a security guarantee. It remains to be seen whether these demands will come up when the top diplomats of South and North Korea, as well as the U.S. and China, attend the ASEAN Regional Forum in Singapore next week. 오정희, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, at the border village of Panmunjom, the two Koreas exchanged documents to prepare for the reunion for war-torn families. Included in it, the list that confirmed which individuals on the other side are still alive. They are narrowing down the candidates before exchanging the final list early next month. According to the nation's unification ministry, the session went as planned, and Pyongyang made no extra demands. There have been some concerns as North Korea's propaganda websites hinted that the family reunions could be in jeopardy if Seoul doesn't return the regime's restaurant workers that defected to the south in 2016. The long overdue event is scheduled to take place for a week in mid-August. Anticipation builds as Pyongyang is expected to return the remains of American soldiers killed in the Korean War before this week is up. But allegedly, final approval for the operation has not been given by the regime. Lee Ji-won gets us up to speed with the developments.
A number of officials from the U.S. Defense Department are reportedly due in North Korea later this week to take back the remains of American troops who died in the Korean War. Citing a U.S. official, CNN reported Tuesday that the officials are coming first to South Korea and then will take either an American or South Korean transport plane to fly into the north on Friday. They'll reportedly get a cursory review of the remains by taking photos of each container for initial documentation. After the remains are flown to Osan Air Base in South Korea, a team of American forensic specialists will examine them more closely, looking for any identification like dog tags or uniforms. That process is expected to take about 5 days. A ceremony will be held at the base to honor the fallen before their remains are flown to Hawaii for DNA identification, which will take months. Generals from the U.S. and North Korea met last week about the return of the remains, which was part of the agreement reached by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump last month in Singapore. CNN's report aligns with one from U.S. military's independent newspaper Stars and Stripes, which cited an American official as saying Pyongyang agreed to return an initial 55 sets of remains on July 27th, the 65th anniversary of the Korean War armistice. However, the official cited by CNN said Pyongyang has still not given the U.S. or South Korea final approval. That would mean it's not certain the transfer will happen on Friday, which the official said would be bad in terms of confidence building between Pyongyang and Washington. But President Trump is still optimistic. He said Tuesday at a convention of veterans, including some who fought in Korea, that he is hopeful that the process will start very soon. Since the 1990s, an estimated 635 sets of remains have been sent back from the north, but over 5,000 are still there. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Over in Laos, a hydroelectric dam collapsed, taking lives and leaving many other people unaccounted for. The structure under construction was being built by a joint venture including a Korean company, which is why, while investigation and rescue efforts are underway, Seoul's government promised active support. Kim Mo-kyun fills us in on the latest.
According to Vientiane Times, a state-run paper in Laos, at least 19 people have died and some 50 more are missing in the southeastern part of the country after a hydroelectric dam under construction collapsed Monday evening. The Sepian Senamnoi hydropower plant in a top province was being built by a joint venture including South Korea's SK Engineering and Construction and partners from Laos and Thailand, and was expected to go into full operation next year. South Korean President Moon Jae-in has ordered his government to do all it can to help Laos cope with the disaster. According to his spokesman, he called for strong support measures, including the dispatch of an emergency relief team as soon as Thursday.
Although the exact cause of the accident is not yet known, President Moon said that since Korean firms were involved in the construction process, the government should participate actively in relief measures.
The government of Laos says the flooding was caused by the part of the dam built by SK E&C collapsing. But the Korean shipbuilder says an unexpectedly large amount of water from recent heavy rains flowed over the dam and broke pieces of it, causing the area to flood. SK says that while the investigation goes on, it's actively engaged in rescue operations by establishing a crisis management team and dispatching Thailand-based helicopters to rescue stranded people. Kim Mo-gyan, Arirang News.
Back here in the nation, Parliament will convene an extraordinary session in August. The agreement was reached today following a meeting between the floor leaders of the three major parties. Focus will mainly be on handling urgent pending bills related to people's livelihoods and boosting the sluggish economy. Rival parties will form a joint task force to deal with such bills. Plus, during that session, a confirmation hearing for the nominee to head the National Human Rights Commission will be held. Aside from that, a parliamentary hearing will be held also on the controversial documents about potentially invoking martial law drawn up by the Defense Security Command. That will happen once the Defense Ministry and the prosecution conclude their joint investigation. This morning, the independent team investigating the Defense Security Command's alleged martial law contingency plans raided the military intel unit's HQ in Gwacheon, Gyeonggi-do Province. They also raided the residence of some of the unit's members allegedly involved in drawing up that controversial plans early last year. The independent probe team also continued to summon key figures of the DSC to find out their roles in making the document. 50 members of the intel unit were reportedly involved in preparing the document. Included in it, plans to quell candlelight protest in case the Constitutional Court doesn't uphold the parliament impeachment vote against Park Geun-hye, who served as president before being mired in corruption and power abuse scandals. For more than a decade, disturbing low birth rates continue to rattle South Korea. Many analysts fear Asia's fourth largest economy could face its demographic cliff much sooner than expected. Won Jung-hwan looked beyond the concerning digits.
The number of newborns in Korea has been steadily decreasing for 30 consecutive months. According to the figures released by Statistics Korea on Wednesday, about 27,900 babies were born in May, down 7.9% from a year earlier. The number of monthly childbirth has decreased on year every month since December 2015, and this is the first time the figure has dropped below the 30,000 mark since the data started to be compiled in 1981. Despite concerted efforts to tackle the problem for the last decade, including measures to encourage people to have more children by offering financial incentives, the drop in the number of newborns is continuing to set new records. The crude birth rate, which refers to the number of births per 1,000 people per year, also came to an all-time low of 7 last year, down from the previous year's 7.9. Meanwhile, the number of deaths came to 23,900 in May, up 0.4% from a year earlier. Industry experts are concerned that the country could face its own demographic cliff. Demographic cliff refers to the sharp drop in consumption that is expected to come when fewer heads of household are in the peak age group, resulting for most spending population to decline. A demographic cliff leads to a consumption cliff and will eventually undermine the country's economic growth potential. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
Consumer confidence in the nation plunged in July, a trend largely driven by growing concerns over the escalating trade war between Washington and Beijing, as well as signs of an economic slowdown in Korea. Kim Hye-sung breaks down the numbers for us.
South Korea's consumer sentiment in July fell by the steepest margin in 20 months to record an index score of 101. That's down 4.5 points from June. It's also the lowest figure since April 2017, when the country was rattled by a corruption scandal that eventually brought down the former Park Geun-hye administration. The Bank of Korea attributed the slide to the escalating trade spat between the U.S. and China and to Korea's sluggish job growth.
The fight between Korea's top two trading partners and the growing protectionism between the U.S. and the EU are increasing the downside risk to Korea's export-driven economy. Sluggish employment figures added to concerns of a possible economic downturn, hurting consumer sentiment. Between January and June, a monthly average of 142,000 new jobs were added, the slowest growth since the 2008 global financial crisis.
The Consumer Sentiment Index for July is now getting close to 100, the threshold that separates optimism from pessimism. The index is a leading indicator of future consumption. The fact that all of its sub-indices fell means domestic consumption in the latter half of this year is likely to slow down. Bad news for the Korean economy that's already struggling from export uncertainties and slowing investment.
The sub-index for households' economic outlook fell 9 points to 87, and the sub-index on current economic conditions fell 7 points. Despite the government's efforts to create jobs and boost wages, outlook on job opportunity dropped 6 points to 87, the slowest figure since April 2017. The expected inflation rate for the following year stood at the same in June at 2.6%. 김혜성, Arirang News.
Imports got more expensive for Korea last month. The nation's trade term index fell to a three-year low due to higher oil prices. The index measures the unit-for-unit price of imports in terms of the country's exports. According to the Bank of Korea, it came to 93.29, a 7.3% drop from last year. It's the lowest since November of 2014. This stems from high oil prices. Last month, it spiked about 47% during the same period, jacking up import prices along the way. But another key index improved. The import terms of trade, the amount of imports a country can buy for its total exports, rose 0.4% on year to 146. Washington plans to set aside billions of dollars to help local farmers amid the country's escalating trade disputes with other nations. The U.S. president even tweeted, quote, "Tariffs are the greatest." But according to our Kan Young-woo, a sizable portion of Americans seem to disagree with that notion.
The Trump administration has revealed a $12 billion plan to help American farmers who have been hit by the U.S. president's intensifying trade war with other countries. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue said on Tuesday that the emergency relief aid is a firm statement that other nations cannot bully U.S. agricultural producers to force the administration to back down from its hardline stance. Several countries and regions, including China, the European Union, Canada, and Mexico, have imposed heavier duties on U.S. imports in retaliation to President Trump's tariff policies. Trump, however, appears unfazed, tweeting that tariffs are the greatest and either a country which has treated the United States unfairly on trade negotiates a fair deal or it gets hit with tariffs.
So the way we keep America great is to make at least reasonable, I'm not saying at least reasonable, at least fair trade deals, not stupid trade deals like we've put up with for 25 years. So we're changing it, and we're changing it rapidly.
But some Republicans disagree with the president.
I've made it pretty clear I don't think tariffs are the right answer. I don't support tariffs. I think tariffs are taxes, and I think there are better tools that we can use to hold abusers of trade laws.
Almost half of the American public also disagree with the Trump administration's trade policy. According to a joint poll by NBC and the Wall Street Journal, 49% of respondents said Trump's tariff plan will raise the cost of goods and hurt the economy. A quarter said the tariffs will protect American jobs and help the economy. Kan Young-woo, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, air conditioning. It's something that most people in Korea can't live without these days, with the mercury easily hovering over 30. But the overdependence on the cooling system is putting a tremendous strain on power grids across the country, with electricity reserves expected to dip to a 5-year low. Oh Se-young has the full story.
Weather authorities have kept heatwave alerts in place across major cities on Wednesday, as the scorching conditions continue to grip most of the country. The daytime high peaked to over 35 degrees Celsius in Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province, and reached up to 40 degrees in the southern province of Gyeongsangbuk-do. While the average temperature range was relatively lower than the day before, it still remains 4 to 7 degrees hotter than the average time for this year, and is made worse by the humidity. The prolonged heat wave has caused more than just discomfort, as households and businesses crank up their air conditioning, causing power demand to spike, leading to blackouts in residential areas. Power demand continued to surge above 90 million kilowatts, a historic high for the third day in a row on Wednesday. The reserve power supply ratio was slightly higher than the day before, hovering around 10%, but still below the government's 11% estimate for this week. Addressing concerns about the power shortage, Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy Bae Gun-gu told a local radio station on Wednesday that the current reserve rate is sufficient, despite the initially miscalculated estimates. He said that with the summer holiday period beginning later this week, power demand is likely to fall naturally as industrial activity slow down. Seong, Arirang News.
Staying with the topic of unbearable heat in the nation, more and more people are seeking out products to help cool themselves down. Our Sobobin gets us better acquainted with some of the most popular items this summer.
People in Korea are opening up their wallets as they try and beat the heat this summer. A range of products are gaining popularity as people look for ways to keep cool. Handheld fans and cooling sprays are some of the must-have items for the summer. The popularity of handheld fans has soared this year, with sales up nearly 50% compared to last year.
Along with the fan, other cooling items have been launched recently and are gaining popularity.
Many people have also been interested in the cooling sheet. The sheet can be stuck on different parts of the body to help people cool down. A cooling scarf that you can tie around your neck for outdoor activities is also very popular this year.
It's so hot, so I thought this would be useful.
Another item that's grabbing people's attention is the wearable fan. The fan goes around your neck so people can stay cool and still have their hands free. As the sizzling summer shows no sign of ending, these items are likely to keep flying off the shelves as people try to find ways to stay cool. 서부빈, Arirang News.
Time to turn to our Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you'll need. Michelle, on top of scorching temperatures, seems like we have to brace for an approaching typhoon with a Korean name.
That's right, Daniel. Currently, Typhoon Chongdari is passing northwest of Guam. Then it will move northwards to pass near the waters of Dokdo Island next Monday. Now, the typhoon won't impact the nation directly, but based on the current forecast readings, the nation could be receiving some much-needed rain along with some cool winds, which will pull down the mercury a bit. Now, until then, sizzling conditions will continue on the peninsula with some sporadic showers expected in the northern regions of the country tomorrow. And Japan, which has also been baking under deadly heat waves, will finally get to see the mercury dropping a bit as the sky turns cloudy. Temperatures are yet to reach comfortable levels as we should prepare for another sweltering tropical night as Seoul wakes up to 28 degrees Celsius tomorrow. Now, as for the daily highs, Seoul reaches up to 34 degrees, Gwangju and Daegu scorching at 36 and 38 degrees respectively. Now, for the time being, the sky will stay clear and cloudless with some high UV levels and ozone levels as well, with temperatures in the mid-30s during the day. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world. That's all we could squeeze into tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Wherever you may be tuning in from, thanks for staying with us.